to my YouTube channel, One Race, a Human Race, All Human. Today is Saturday, July 31st, 2021. There is a need for a uniform process for federal elections based upon Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1 of the United States Constitution. Why? Because the state of Georgia and other states want to overturn validly cast votes. In other words, change the outcome of elections. In other words, cheat and steal elections. Whoever wins, wins. It must be fair. We are in need of an independent, impartial, competent, nonpartisan tabulation committee that will count the votes of federal elections. That means House of Representatives, that means United Senate, that means the presidency. Where is that based? It's based on Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1 of the Constitution, which says the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators, representatives, shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. But, Congress may at any time, by law, make or alter such regulations, except as to the places of choosing senators. So we need a uniform process for federal elections, and the main part of that is to have a independent, impartial, competent, nonpartisan tabulation committee, which will count the disputed votes and the non-disputed votes, and then grant automatic certification of winners and losers based on the totals of the undisputed votes and the disputed votes that have been resolved by the independent, impartial, competent, nonpartisan commission. Independent, impartial, nonpartisan, competent tabulation commission of experts who will count all the votes. Count all the votes. And whoever wins, wins. This is America. This is democracy.
We're going now to the gut-wrenching testimony from 4 Capitol Hill police officers during the House Select Committee's first hearing this week. Those officers sharing the emotional stories about the January 6th attack, along with the riot's physical and mental toll on them. Let's all take a listen.
But on January 6th, for the first time, I was more afraid to work at the Capitol than my entire deployment to Iraq.
I was grabbed, beaten, tased, all while being called a traitor to my country. I was at risk of being stripped of and killed with my own firearm, as I heard chants of killing with his own gun.
Several attempted to knock me over and steal my baton. One latched onto my face and got his thumb in my right eye, attempting to gouge it out. I cried out in pain and managed to shake him off.
The crowd, perhaps around 20 people, joined in screaming, "Boo! F***ing." No one had ever called me while wearing the uniform of a Capitol police officer.
Joining me now, Ashley Pratt Oates, communication strategist and board member of Republican Women for Progress, and Zerlina Maxwell, director of progressive programming at SiriusXM and host of the show Zerlina on Peacock. I gotta say, girls, hearing it again, it's almost reduced me to tears just listening to these guys again, these grown men, these brave guys. I mean, they're in, their safety. That's what they do. They're police officers. And to hear them make these retellings in their accounts, it's pretty chilling. I imagine that's close to your reaction too, Zerlina. I mean, what about the disgusting racial slurs? We beat them, of course, and people can figure out what was being said. This obviously goes far beyond not liking the results of the election.
Of course it does, Alex, and I think that a lot of folks have been trying to make that point through the Trump years. Back during the campaign, I remember us landing on the description that Donald Trump was normalizing racism and making it okay again for people to go out and be overtly racist. I remember some of his rallies during the campaign in 2016, and I remember thinking, this looks like something that should be in black and white, like out of Eyes on the Prize or something. This doesn't look like 2016. And now, 5 years later, I think about those moments all the time, because the culmination of so much of that ugliness and energy was January 6th. And those folks who stormed the Capitol, they weren't just doing that because they loved Donald Trump. They were doing it because of what Donald Trump represents. He basically emboldened white supremacists to storm the Capitol and say, those people of color, that coalition of color that put Joe Biden into the White House, their votes are not legitimate votes. That is essentially what the big lie is based on, Alex. And unfortunately, we're in a moment where the threat of this type of political violence is still here, because you have an entire political party operating in bad faith that can't see on the screen what really happened, and they're still lying about it.
Yeah. In fact, Ashley, several leading Republicans were asked if they had watched that hearing, and they said no. In a piece that you wrote for NBC News Think, you write, historically, Republicans have been the party that has proudly represented law and order. But while Republicans are still quick to declare their loyalty to law enforcement on the campaign trail, most of the party has become apologists for the rioters. As was noted throughout Tuesday's hearing, GOP members have refused to acknowledge that brutal force was used against officers during that riot at the Capitol, and that police were themselves the target. How, Ashley, could Republicans hear that testimony and claim to be the party of law and order? How could they in any good conscience ignore that?
Well, it's no surprise here, Alex, that the Republicans are living in an alternate reality, and one that is completely dangerous. They're trying to minimize, downplay, and distract from what really happened on January 6th. And that's because the longer this investigation continues, the more skeletons they're going to find in the GOP's closet, as pointed out by Zerlina. There's a history of racism and welcoming of white supremacy into the party. There's a history of violence against police officers. I mean, the very people that we're serving to protect, right, and take an oath to protect us, were beaten with Blue Lives Matter flags. Let's picture that for a second. The party of law and order who says that they support law enforcement were using flags that say they support law enforcement to brutally beat them. That right there is a jarring picture and a disturbing one, and one that really happened on January 6th. So again, when these GOP members are saying that this was just a normal day at the Capitol and these were tourists coming to tour the Capitol, they were terrorists and they were traitors and they are Trump supporters. So right there, you have a real problem right now in the GOP, because the more they live in this alternate reality, the more dangerous and the more violent it's going to get with Trump as their leader.
And also, while this was happening, the hearings I'm talking about, there were a handful of Republicans, as you both know, who held a press conference. They were demanding justice for those rioters who stormed the Capitol. They called them political prisoners. And the Washington Post's Dana Milbank wrote in an op-ed, the half-dozen lawmakers, including Matt Gaetz of Florida, Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, made explicit what has become more obvious by the day. Republicans stand with those who attempted a violent coup on January 6th. And it's not just the wingnuts. House Republican leaders held a news conference before the hearing, blaming January 6th not on seditionists, but on Capitol Police, and particularly House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. I mean, Zerlina, how and why are they defending these people and trying to turn this around on Nancy Pelosi?
Well, they turn everything around on Nancy Pelosi. It's always going to be Nancy Pelosi's fault. Before that, it was Hillary Clinton, or they swap back and forth. Maybe they throw in AOC there. Any woman who has a strong opinion and values. But the bottom line here, Alice, is that the threat is still here. I think we have to go back to that point every time possible, because with the Republicans elected in Congress, that, by the way, Marjorie Taylor Greene wasn't even in Congress, and apparently her election results were fine. Just Donald Trump's were wrong. But I think that as long as you have folks like this in the Congress that are placating what those insurrectionists, their violence was for, you're going to have the threat of more violence, Alex. And I think that that's the thing that concerns me as we go forward, because every time Donald Trump puts a date on the calendar, you know, law enforcement should stay on high alert for the potential for more violence. And as Republicans try to violently overthrow elections on the state level, they're legislatively trying to subvert election results by changing the rules for how those votes are counted. So it's a full court strategy right now for Republicans. They know that the demographics of the future are not in their favor. They're trying to rig elections so that they can maintain power. And I think that those anti-democratic actions need to be called out for what they are.
Okay, Zerlina Maxwell, Ashley Pratt-Oates, really important things you both said. Thank you. And all of you, be sure to catch Zerlina Maxwell's show. It's Zerlina. That's what it's called, of course, weeknights at 6 Eastern on the Peacock streaming channel, The Choice from MSNBC. Chicago.